Hello, Dan with Pixel FX here. I'm going to do another installation video. This time a Wii with a Retro GEM. This is going to be a 4-layer Wii, however the kit will work with all versions of the Wii, including the Mini, and we'll get other content for those coming soon. So let's do a quick installation on this. I have this Wii running right here, just analog output to make sure it's okay before I start getting into it. So let's go ahead and I recommend you always test your equipment before you do these mods, because there's nothing worse than installing something and then the console actually doesn't work. So always give a good thorough test. With that said, let's start the teardown. I'll try and not go too fast here, but there is a lot of screws. I've got 3 guys here on the top. And you can see a longer one went in the front. This just comes off. So we don't need to remove these two, so leave those intact. But I'm going to go ahead and go to the bottom, or we can go and do these on the top. This is a tri-wing screw. If you have a Japanese Wii, they will not be tri-wing. There's these 2 screws right here. Now we're going to flip it over. I'm going to remove the battery port. Screw stays with this. Now we need to remove, these 2 are fine, but you do need to remove this guy right here. I'm just going to use a little X-Acto knife and try and get under the these will be tri-wing. Got a few more screws here on the outside case. This guy needs to come off. Make sure on camera this guy needs to come off. I'm just trying to use a this will also be a really tiny tri-wing. Alright, I'll remove this. We've got these 2 covers right here. I try and save these as best I can so I can put them back on. Sometimes though it doesn't always work the best. We got 2 more tri-rings right here. Tri-wings. Let me make sure I'm on camera here. And now this top cover will come off. I think there's actually, I have a USB card in there. And there's a, can't break it too high. So this now will come up once these are removed. Just pull this connector out, set this to the side. Now we've got a few more screws here. Let's go ahead and get these ones in the back. just trying to peel those up. And then these are also a tri-wing security. Okay. And I think there's 2 screws there, I think. If I remember correctly. There's not. Alright, so with all those screws, the case will now just pull apart. Like so. Go ahead and set this off to your side. It's a good thing to hold all your existing parts. And set it off to the side. Now we're going to tear it down a little bit farther. First thing that needs to come off is the drive. Everything now is Phillips. There won't be any more tri-wings. We got 4 screws that hold the drive down. Then it just pulls straight up. There is some cables on the bottom, so we're going to have to flip her over. And you can pull it off here or here. I'm going to pull it off here, keep it part of the drive. Just unclips. And then I'm going to unclip that there. And I'm going to set the drive over to the side. Now we have a few more plastic things to remove. First though, let's go ahead and get our antennas out of the way. There is a clip down here that you push to the side. That releases this. I'm just going to move that over to the side, and now we're going to remove this one. These will just come over here. Now we're just going to remove a bunch of components on the top. Just to get down here, 3 Phillips screws. These screws are longer than most of the screws inside. We're just going to set these up here. Take special note of when you remove this front plastic piece. There's a nut that sits in right here, and it's just held in by friction, but once you remove it, that nut can fall off. So be careful. What is holding this in still? There we go. That usually doesn't come out that hard, but it did for some reason. Go ahead and remove this little metal shield. I'm just putting all the screws up here. I'm going to remove this guy now. It's 2 screws. Actually, I'm sorry, it's 3. This metal shield, which is connected to this, attaches to this center screw. So we'll pull that 3rd screw off too. And this will just lift out. Set that that to the side. We're going to remove this guy. There's a screw up here. We've also got a screw over here, down in the corner. We're going to unplug our fan and unscrew the fan here. It's also part of the same piece of plastic. Fan will lift out. Just leave the screws in that. And now this will lift out. And we're almost to the insides. And we've got multiple screws around the outside here, so we're going to go around the perimeter and just remove all these screws. We've got two here in the middle. Alright, now that those are all off, I'm going to grab them with some tweezers. They kind of seem to fly if you try and pull the shield off, like a little springboard. So I'm just going to try and grab them all here. Still got one here that's not going to come out. I'm going to go ahead and lift this up. Shield is off. Now for the Wii to boot up, this needs to be plugged in. If this is not plugged in, it won't boot. You don't need to have the drive connected. However, you do need the drive connected to boot like a homebrew game or something like that normally. So just note that if you're getting a black screen, make sure this is plugged in. So there's 4 more screws holding the Wii down. They're right here. And screw all 4. And then this whole piece just pop up. Okay, and now we are to the motherboard where we can start doing our installation. Alright, now that we got the motherboard free, we just have a few things to prep before we start soldering the flex in. So first, let's set the jumpers on the GEM to the Wii. And also the audio lines. I'm going to use a scope here. A little bit. Alright, we need to do C, D, and E. I'm using leaded solder here. Now let's jump down to the actual jumpers. We're going to jump K and H. I'm not using any flux here, I'm using the flux that's inside this solder. You can see when I apply it down, the flux that comes out. Alright. Iron's still a little warm. It's right now set at 300. it's set now at 300. It was at 330. So now that those jumpers are set, we can set this to the side, and we can actually, before we set it to the side, this is something I always forget to do when I'm doing a gem, is I always forget to put the Wi-Fi antenna on, and then I have to tear down the console again. So I will go ahead and just plug that in now and set that off to the side so I don't forget about it. Now let's take a look at the Wii motherboard here. Like I said, this is a 4-layer. There's 2 other major revisions, the mini and the 6-layer. The points are relative to that motherboard. So these will be the points for the 4-layer. You'll need to see the points for the 6-layer board or the mini online. So let's get started here. First, let's go ahead and mount the gem in its location. So let's zoom up here. Alright, so we're going to focus on this section of the board. Right around here. This is where we're going to mount the actual mount for the gem itself. Alright, here's our piece. It's going to lay in this area. You can see that there's a component on this particular revision that's in the way, so we can't be on top of that. We need to cut off this plastic nub just with some side snips, and you'll see with that trimmed off, we can angle this to where it's flat and lines up like so. You can see there's a little bit of a gap up here, but that's okay. Like I said, we're trying to, can't go back any farther because of this component. So we're going to stop right there, and then we'll solder it into place. I'm going to use some Kester 595T liquid flux. It requires pretty much no cleanup, and that's why I use it. It doesn't have great properties in terms of how it functions, but I'm able to make it work. It's easier just to not have to mess with the cleanup. So here we are, we're just going to line this up. My iron probably needs a lot more power since this is a big ground. I'm just going to tack her in. And now, put my iron up to 400 there. I'm just going to flow some of the solder in. Then we're going to go back to this one. Do the same thing. Okay. Hope you guys were able to see that. Now, we're going to take our standoffs right here, just peel back the plastic. And they are self-aligning, so they just drop in. The reason these don't come pre-made from the factory is the way this PCB is, it's very difficult to get it produced with how small it is and the type of cuts it needs with castellated edges. But it's really easy to solder on. And we'll demonstrate right here. Let me turn my iron back down. Back down to 300. I'm just going to let it flow in. Just to where it's floating. What I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Get this a little better here. You can see it just flow right in. Now you can see how the gem mounts in here, like so. And then we're going to be soldering underneath this flex up here. So now that the gem is mounted, or not mounted, we're going to put it to the side. We need to prep some points on the motherboard. I've already actually prepped these points, so you guys don't have to wait to see me hunt and peck back and forth. So I will show you the points. This is the video mode select pin right here. You can kind of see where I am in reference. This is the controller hookup. It's right here. And then this is the reset. I will definitely make sure to refer to the guides or the pictures when you go to wire these pins up. It can be confusing about where you are, so just really make sure that you do the correct ones. There also is alternative points. So if you want to check to make sure that you have the right point, you can, for example, here's the test point for the controller. Let me show this on. Here's the test point for the controller way down here, and then the controller is going to be up here, and we get a beep. So we know we got the right guy. So you can also check your points like that as well. So with that said, the next steps are going to be installing the flex itself. On this particular model, it mounts like this. To make it easier to solder, I'm going to turn this around. And you can see why we did some of those points already. It just makes it easier. And then our hookups are all these cables. So, however, there is alternative test points on the flex cable itself. We have the cable detect, the controller, and the reset. Right there. And they connect to those arms. So if you don't want to use the arms, you can totally just snip those off and run wires straight from those points to these via magnet wire or some other thing. The Wii Mini will actually require that for the CD detection point. A wire is required, just because this one's not long enough. So before I solder the flex down, I'm going to go ahead and just prep. I'm going to prep the pins around this to make sure it has easy solderability. So all I'm going to do is just totally clean my iron off. And put it in here. And I am just going to touch these points just to where it kind of brings the pin alive. Now, one of my flux has gone away, I can go faster. Let's put more flux. Just kind of want the front of that pin just to get some solder sucked up to it. And there's two ways to do these. You can do leaded solder or lead-free solder. If you choose to use leaded solder, you'll need to do like a solder wash and make sure it's done pretty well. I'll probably use lead-free on this as it's a little bit faster. But it requires a little bit more skill in that it requires you to just be faster because you're using more heat. Just prepping these, and then we have some audio pins up here we need to do. Okay. Now let's go ahead and lay our flex down. If you're doing the 6-layer Wii, it'll actually mount like this, so don't get confused if you're using it as a reference video. And the 4-layer will go like this. And we're going to zoom in a little bit. We want to make sure we get good alignment on all sides. Down here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just trying to get it aligned best I can, and then we'll tack it. I always start on the biggest side. Okay, we look pretty good here. Good up here on this side. Good on those corners. Okay. I'm not going to put any solder on my iron yet. Just going to tack it. And that tacking made it easy because I pre-prepped those pins. So I'm just going to kind of do that in all these. Just kind of pre-tack it down, and then I'll put more solder on my iron here in a second. Just going to go really fast. Flip this around. And just kind of putting light pressure on the flex to hold it down. Okay. Now let's get these edges over here. Not really trying to make a good connection, just trying to make sure everything sits where it needs to go. Some of these are grounds and they're hard to go. Still haven't got it yet. There we got it. Alright, so now I'm going to reflux all this. Now I'm just going to put the tiniest amount of lead-free on my iron. And we're just going to add some to the pins here, just to the top of the pads. I'm not trying to add it to the pins yet. See, I lost her. Alright. I'll turn my iron up a little bit. Right now I'm at 340C. Some of these pads are ground, so they take a little bit. I'm burning that flux off. This one up here is a ground as well. There we go. There, it's finally going. As you can see, I'm going really fast when I go over these. You don't want to make sure you're on the pin too long. You'll burn her up. So that's what some good legs look like. So let's go down to the next section. I'm going to go right here and drop just a little bit more flux. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to clean my iron off. I now have enough solder in there. I don't want any more. As you can see, we got a joint. To try and get rid of that, I'm going to put my heat up a little bit on my iron. Put more flux down. Got her. Lower my iron back down to 350 or 340. Hand's kind of shaky. Okay. Clean those up just a little bit more uniform. Okay. Now we're going to go to the main side. Do just a hair more flux. Get this outside over here. We're just going to slowly, just carefully drag up and down. Not trying to really go side to side. Sometimes if you get a short underneath these pads, it's difficult to fix if it's on the bottom. If this was like an IC where you had access, I would definitely drag solder. But since if you do get a joint, the only way, if you get a joint underneath, the only way to get rid of it is to just apply more heat and hope it comes up. Or you have to remove the flex. Alright, so now let's get back to some of these joints. You can see I'm definitely using lead-free as the joints are all kind of gross looking, honestly. Gray, dark gray, not shiny. Okay. I'm going to stop there, and we got one more edge over here. Okay. And while we're here, let's go ahead and check for shorts. I'll check with my multimeter here. I'll try and get this into view so you can see what my meter does. As I'm checking this, just checking adjacent pins. Some will have a short, but you'll see the short is 37 ohms, so that's okay. You're looking for shorts that are direct shorts. So you get a 37, so that's a power and ground. I think these are 2 grounds. They are. We'll check the audio. If anything, it's usually the audio that shorts out. Nope, audio's okay. All right. So there is one thing that I would probably recommend doing, is you can't really test this setup without the heatsink installed. The console will overheat extraordinarily fast if you boot it up without the heatsink. So I really recommend never turning the console on without the heatsink. A way around that is, to make it easier to test, is if you have a couple just M2 screws laying around, you can use these as a way to hold the heatsink on. Because otherwise you need the bottom of the case put on to hold the heatsink. And with that, it becomes difficult to diagnose any problems. And since this is a pretty hard install, I recommend installing the heatsink on this way. It'll likely speed things up in the end. Like, again, it's not needed, but I kind of want to show you guys some of the status of what's happening when I boot it up and what it looks like. So I'm just putting 2 M2 screws in diagonally on the heatsink. Almost done here. I'll show you what it looks like. So as you can see, and I got 2. As you can see, the heatsink is just screwed on. It's not over tightened, it's just tight enough to where I now can boot it up. So actually, now that the cable's installed, we can do a quick test and confirm that we get video. Let's open up our... Let's see what we got. Yes, and our Wii's booted right here, as you can see. This is just standard analog, so at this point you should have analog. If you don't, then something is shorted and incorrect. We're going to go ahead and pull that. Alright, now we're ready to put the main bed in the flex. To get that alignment correct, you're going to need to use your GEM. And what we're looking for is the alignment of this edge. So, this particular flex, if I was to plug it in, I'm not going to put any bends in it yet. this. This might give us some better light. There we go. With that plugged in and upside down, it kind of seems a little confusing on how this is going to go. Actually, let me make it easier for you guys. So if you have the 4-layer board, you have to do a bend. And what we have to do is, we're trying to align this part up with that test point dot. So we want to loop through it, or loop around. So I'm going to take the flex like this, going to put my finger like that, and I'm going to loop down. Okay? And you can see I'm aligning to this little test point dot. This will be different for 4-layer and different for the Wii Mini. So you can also see I'm aligned right on that edge. That's because when this sits down, this makes the alignment correct. So where we actually want to mount it is, see these 2 pads right here. I'm going to pull down just a little bit farther, and we're going to stop. And now we're just going to kind of pull these up and out of the way. I'm just going to kind of collapse that down a little bit so it stays flat. If you don't totally squish it, but like make a little pressure so it stays. Now we're going to cut off our ground area here. Not cut, but scrape. We're just going to scrape away. It's underneath that. We're going to do the same thing up here. We're just scraping the solder mask away so we can solder that down. We're going to switch back to lead-free now. Or, I'm sorry, leaded solder, not lead-free. And we are going to get a little bit more heat on my iron. Let's put a little flux down. Let's try and just solder this only. There we go. Okay. Now that that's held down, you can see how the gem mounts. Plugs in like this. And then sits upside down like so. So that's why getting that line there was critical. Next steps. So I'll plug the gem back. We've got a couple hookups here. I'm going to do the power hookups. So we've got some solder right here. We're going to do the power hookups. This one is the 3.3. And this is the 5 volt. So for the 3.3, you can see that we have a hookup down here. It says 3.3. That's where we're going to solder to. Just going to take that, like so. Take our 5-volt line. 5-volt line is going to go up here to the solder mask that says 5. Let's take a look underneath the microscope on those. They're all good. Okay. Now our power's hooked up. We've got our arms right here. And like I said, you could run wires from these points to up here. Like you could do some small magnet wire and make it look really sharp. I'm just going to use these flexes as it just makes it a little bit quicker and easier. Alright, now that we're here, we're going to mount these controller reset and the cable detect wires up. We're going to take the longer wire first and route it underneath the main flex here. And then I'm just going to route it up like that. You see it come up underneath. And you can see we have our 1 points already. So we're going to target that point. Doesn't really totally matter of the angle that this comes off on, because you'll see when we do the top flex, we can bend it anyway. And then, make sure you guys can see this. We're going to hit our other point right here, and we're just going to turn this upside down. To where it hits. Clean my iron. Drop some flux. Okay, I'm going to put some more solder on these. I'll let it pop up. Okay. Just let that sit flat. Like so. Now for this last point, the controller or the cable detect, there's actually a test point right here that is the same that we just soldered. That actually is the alternative point. And I'm going to solder that because this wire ends up just being right there. So it makes it easy. So we're going to go to that test point 47 right there. This is what tells the Wii to the ability to output in 480p mode. So this is the most critical wire, I would say, of the other ones. This is also what allows the Wii Mini to output in 480p too. we're able to control this line. The iron's a little warm, taking her back down. Okay. Alright, so now we are hooked up. So, before we power the gem up, I'm going to do another quick test. So we've got power and everything. I want to make sure still nothing is shorted. So let's do a quick test real quick. And I'm still testing analog here. Yep, and we still got video, so that's good. Alright, turn her off. Now I'm going to plug in the gem. I want to make sure that I still get power. Just make sure it's pushed in all the way here. Okay. Now with it like this, I'm going to power up. I'm going to set something in between this. Just a piece of plastic. As you can see, got a slow glow. That's a good sign. Let's go ahead. Let's see if we have video. Okay, let's open up our morph. Yep. So there we've got video. We'll want to confirm we have audio. And I do hear audio. Cool. So now I'm going to turn the console off. It's about as long as I would even recommend it, with even with no fan. If you do put a fan underneath it, you can run it for a lot longer. So now that we've confirmed the gem runs, I'm going to go ahead and unplug it for now. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and screw it down. So take the M1.6 screws. This guy's antenna is going to route out to the back here. Just make sure you have enough clearance on this screw boss down here. And then we're going to screw this in. Now, if you didn't get video, check all your points again. Is the first check. Okay, so now we're gonna just keep everything flat. Just making sure everything fits okay. Alright, we just got a few more things to do here. Let's go ahead and hook up the HDMI output. Just going to plug it in like so. And then this plugs in like so. Make sure it goes in all the way. Now we're going to mount this last guy up here. We need to remove some solder from the area before we can do that. So you guys see that right there. Okay. So I'm just going to use some solder wick here, or solder braid, or whatever you want to call it. Go my iron to max. Clean her all up. Okay. Now this can sit completely flush. Like so. And so let's go ahead and solder it in place. Better view. I'm using leaded solder for this. My iron's still pretty hot, so this is going to go quick. And right here, I just want to make sure the jack is perpendicular. Make sure it's aligned correctly. Then we're going to tack her in. And I'm trying to align to the length of the USB port here. We're pretty close. Go ahead and finish tacking her in. Okay. Alright, now we can install the HDMI flex. It's plugged in right here. I'm going to route it underneath this actually. So I'm going to take these screws off. This kind of keeps it the most, looks the cleanest, I guess. There's a couple different ways to route back to it, but I'm just going to go underneath it like that. And you can see I still have a little bit of room here to wiggle it around, so I'm just going to loosely screw it back down. Just make sure you don't get snagged on anything. See, I have a little bit of leeway to move this around. I'm not crimping it yet, I'm just kind of folding it to see what it's going to look like. And so we can tighten it up a little bit. Let's pull this side out a little more. There we go. Pull this down a little bit more, just to make it look a little more even. Now I'm just going to lightly crease it. And then before we continue, we can do a double check to make sure that we get video out of there, since now we're jumping this, to make sure everything's plugged in correctly. Let's give it a try. Yep, and we got video there. Turn her off. Now, we're going to do the Wiimote controller part. Set this off to the side, just right over here. We've got this little board. I'm going to get this out of here. This little board, and then we need this flex. So this flex right here breaks off. It's actually two flexes. Just pull apart the head. We're going to focus on the big flex first. Solder it with the wires going up, like so. So I'm just going to tack this on real quick. I'm just going to pretend 1. Like I said, the wire should be face up. Just going to align it. Tack it. Tack the other ones now. My iron's still a little warm, sometimes I forget to turn it down. I can tell by how fast the flux sizzles. So your temps can be higher, but you just have to be quicker when they're higher. Just kind of cleaning it up. Okay. Go ahead and solder this guy. Same thing. Wires are going to go up. In on one pad. clean. Okay. Now this board's prepped. I'm going to solder it onto the main board. I'm going to solder it underneath here. And you can see which wire goes to what. Wires go to the top. Solder that in place. Since I have a really good alignment right now, I'm actually going to solder with my left hand. I'm going to keep my right hand unmoved. I just moved it just a little bit. So try this again. So I usually go underneath the cable. Flux. Okay. You guys are seeing that okay? Just tacking it down. Okay. That's now in place. And this guy is going to route right above here. And the wire is going to go through there. So we're going to go pull the pad off the back of this. This is really sticky, so if you do ever decide to remove this board later on, make sure you twist it off. If you just pull it straight up, you'll probably rip the PCB up. Won't rip it, but it might rip off some pads or traces or whatnot. So we're going to line it like so. We're going to access this wire actually. Let's do this now. That's going to go up through that hole like that. We're just going to press it down. And you can kind of just fold this however you want to right there. Alright, let's go ahead and hook up our controller wire on the other side. I've already hooked this up. As you can see, the lines stayed at the top. The lines are on the top side. And so with that, this should have a red LED blinking light when it's communicating with the Pi. So we should see that at startup. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this all the way down. And then let's boot her up and confirm all of our controllers work. Before we power it up, make sure you have a GameCube controller plugged in to test. I'm going to use a Wavebird. This needs to be plugged in before you power up the console. Otherwise the Wii won't detect the GameCube controller. Let's give you a little scaler here. I got a Wiimote. So to access the OSD, let me close the Morph OSD here. So I am going into a Morph 4K. So if you do the B button, or it's dark here, B, A, start, or the home button out, bring up the OSD. So you can see that's working. Alright, let's go ahead and get this back together. I'm going to take the heatsink back off. Get rid of these temporary screws. Okay. I'm going to take our thermal pad. Let's set it right here. Now we need the metal shield. We need to make some adjustments. The thermal pad is definitely required if you're keeping the metal shield. If you don't want to keep the metal shield, you can just ditch it. But if you want to keep the metal shield, that thermal pad is required. So as you can see, we've got some little trimming to do on the metal shield around the HDMI port. I'm going to go ahead and just remove most of this, and then that section right there. I'm going to just use scissors. Sometimes it's easier just to snip it. I'm going to push this out of the way for a second. Flush that up. I got some flush cutters right here. Some flat pair of pliers. And bend this guy back. And then we've just got this one more piece to remove. I'm going to take this, I'm going to just bend it off with these pliers. Now we can see what our Fitbit looks like. So far it's looking pretty good. Okay. I'm going to cover up this area on the metal shield right here with some Captain tape. I would say this is not required, but since this is so high up, I mean this is extremely tight, but I just don't want there to be any risk, so I'm going to put some Captain tape right here, just in case if that was to come loose, it would just bang the top of that tape. Here you can see the whole Wii's tucked inside, or the Wii gem. So now, let's bring this over. There's one thing that we need to cut on the plastic as well. Just drop this out like so. We're going to need to make let's see if we cleared it. Well, it's totally good. Alright, so now we're going to route this cable just on that side like that. We're going to put our heatsink back on. Make sure you've got your thermal pads. This will be the longer screws, the longer silver screws. Here we go. At this point, it's just putting the Wii back together. Just want to make sure I'm not pinching this Wi-Fi antenna in here. So just make sure it's out of the way when you tighten that down. Let's go ahead and continue with our reassembly. Make sure that doesn't get smashed in there. Make sure this can loop around. Trying to get this Wi-Fi antenna up around here as I drop it in. Okay, that's what we want, like that. Now we can go ahead and start screwing screws back in. This is conveniently marked of which screws we need to put in. So first, we're going to go ahead and screw this in. Main two screws. Make sure everything is seated. Sorry, I'm not in one of these plastic plugs here. There we go. Make sure not you're pitching no wires there. We'll keep going. Some more small silver screws. Go around the back. I need to get my magnetic screwdriver. Let you know if there's an X, don't put one there. Go ahead and screw the front down. Now let's get some parts. We're still missing a couple screws. Here. Alright, these will be a black screw on the outside. Just the normal one silver screw in the middle right here. We're going to take this guy. Let's get the fan. Screw it all down. Sorry, just missed a screw right there. It's back over on top. Like I said, we're just letting this cable right out right there. Plug our fan in. We'll just screw this down first. Use the black screws. There's going to be one in the corner. Screw the fan in. Still using black screws. Okay. Make sure everything's sitting flush. Now let's put the front on. What was this thing that was on the bottom? Those wires go through there, and then these will be the black screws as well. This small silver screw can go on now. Black screw goes in here. Should have another little piece. Remember, these two are longer silver screws. Go in these. And then we got a small silver that goes up here. Okay. Go ahead and screw this down. say, I think I'm missing one. Found it. Okay. Let's hook up our antennas. Go ahead and do the long one first. There's a couple different ways to route the antenna. Usually those don't hold up very well, so I route it a little bit differently. Get your black screw. And I'll just go right over like this. And then there's a little wire tie right here. And then we go ahead and route this guy up. And it's going to sit like that. So go and peel this back. Set it right on top. Okay, antenna's on. We plug in power right there. So to make it easier, we're almost there. Now at this point, with everything almost together, I would thoroughly plug it in and check everything before totally putting the case back together. Because if you do have to remove something, just more steps. So just be methodical with your when putting it back together. Okay, so let's see, where are these screws at? 4 screws with the big washers holding the drive down. But we still have one major thing to do, and that is cut the back of this case so we can slide over the mini HDMI port. We'll get to that here in a second. Get in there, there we go. Alright, so now that this is pretty much together, now would be a good time to test it. It's in a really good state like this. But I'm going to go ahead and go straight for where we need to do the cut on here. So let's slide this back plate on and I'll show you what we got to do. You can see we just need to remove a little bit of material And so I will usually, this particular style, I will make a mark with a X-Acto knife. From there, set this to the side. I need to get some more light over here. So here's our mark right here. So I'm just going to use side cutters. I find this to be the easiest. Let's see if you're able to watch me do this. This being a black case is not the easiest, but I'm just going to cut up a certain amount. Just kind of breaking the plastic a little bit. So that way when I do snip it, my cuts are more controlled. Alright, we're getting there. Let me see how close we are. Smashing a wire in there. Okay, you see we're getting closer. This is just with a little bit of basic snipping. Do a little bit more. Also, you can use a file. A small file would also be helpful. I may do that for the last part. Again, remember, check often, because if you remove too much material, you can't put it back on. So this will take a little bit of trial and error. Sorry, I'm struggling. Okay. Smashing the Wi-Fi antenna again. Okay, that's getting to be a pretty good fit. We're going to stop there, I think. Now let's go ahead and finish putting it back together. Oh, there is one piece we're missing. Just noticed it. Let's take this back off. Our little nut for the battery door goes over here, so we can slide that guy in. Okay. Try and not pinch the Wi-Fi cable this time. Okay. Let's get our screws over here. Let's put this back together. We need our 3-hole or our tri-wing pliers here. I'm going to put the 2 silver tri-wings down here. I'm going to do these first. Do these 2 tri-wings on the top. These 2 tri-wings on the top. Let's flip it over. 2 more right here. This will be the last of the silver tri-wing screws. This guy can slide back on. Okay, now we need to put the front plate on, which is right here. The ones on the bottom first. We're going to use black screws now. These are going to be the 2 fairly large black tri-wing screws. Look like this. Now it slipped. Go on this bottom side now. We're going to get one of the longer, really small black screwdrivers, or black screws. It should be a standard Phillips. While we're down here, let's put our pads back on. These guys back on. We just have these up here at the top. This is going to slide in. screws left after this one. And 2 shorter screws. Make sure that it's flush. And 1 more screw. Take these last covers. Alright, we've got a Retro GEM Wii edition. Thanks for watching.